So I recently made a post about obesity and how it isn't a choice. So I talked about the biopsychosocial model, I talked about the ecological perspective, and what those basically say is that there's multiple different factors which lead to a health outcome. Coupled with that is the fact that many medical organizations, such as the American Medical Association, classify obesity as a disease. So when we say something is a disease, we therefore say that it's not really a choice. And I say that, bluntly, that obesity is not a choice, is a culmination of many different factors which lead to that outcome. And let me clarify what I mean in a second. The most common pushbacks I get when I say that obesity isn't a choice and it's a disease is this idea that it's disempowering people from making changes and choices towards better health. And I think that's a bunch of BS, because just because we say something isn't a choice or that it's a disease doesn't mean that there's nothing we could do about it. That is a completely different claim. For example, we don't blame people who get cancer most of the time, but we don't say that there's no options for treating it or dealing with it. We can talk about diseases like cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, diseases that can be related to lifestyle but aren't necessarily caused by a lifestyle. There's many different factors such as genetics, psychological, social phenomenon that can lead to that disease state. But we don't say for those diseases that there's no intervention, that there's no options, that there's no help. Just because in many cases those diseases aren't a choice doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do about it. There are things we can do for those diseases, like we could do for obesity. So when I say that obesity isn't a choice or that it's a disease, I am trying to break the stigma that obesity is due to personal choice alone or primarily. I'm trying to break the stigma and the shaming associated with obesity, because the more we can decrease the stigma and decrease the shame, the more we can help people actually lead better, healthier lives. And for obesity, there are many different interventions that we can implement for people, such as we would do for other metabolic related diseases. There are behavioral interventions, there are medical interventions, such as GLP-1 drugs or surgery, and these are all viable options to help people live healthier lifestyles and healthier lives. But we know from a scientific standpoint that obesity is not due to personal choice alone or primarily. That is due to a culmination of factors which lead to that health outcome. And we also know from an evidence-based standpoint that weight stigma in of itself is damaging to health, is detrimental to people adopting health-based behaviors, and doesn't really help anybody. It just makes the problem worse. So we need to break the stigma. We need to realize that this thing is complicated, but also highlight that there are interventions and things we could do for it, and empower people towards making those type of choices based on their situation. And look, I'm a person who is classified as obese, and it was due to a variety of different factors within my life that led me to this point. It wasn't just me making the wrong choices, even though there were some choices that I made that weren't the best. It was also the environment that I was in, my psychological, mental health, and other different things going on. But with the help of GLP-1 drugs, I'm able to eat less, and it helps me tame myself and temper myself around food. So medical interventions could definitely help. Behavioral interventions like exercise and following certain dietary patterns can definitely help. But it's not just a one-size-fits-all. It's not just an either-or type of deal. Many of these different things can help simultaneously, and we need to think like that.